The 8th Panzer Division was a formation of the Wehrmacht Heer. The division was formed by reorganizing the 3rd Light Division in January 1940. It was transferred to the west and fought in the Battle of France in May 1940, and the German invasion of the Balkans in April 1941. Soon after, the division advanced towards Leningrad under Army Group North in Operation Barbarossa, and would remain on the Eastern Front for the remainder of the war. Staying on defensive fronts, it saw action in the relief of Qum in 1942, Oral and the withdrawals of Army Group Center in 1943, until transferred to Army Group South. The division then fought in a series of retrograde movements, back through the Ukraine, into Hungary and finally into Silesia and surrender in May 1945. During its existence, the division was headquartered in Cottbus in the German military district Wehrkreis III. Organization. In 1938, the 3rd Light Division was formed, consisting of the 67th Panzer Battalion, and the 8th and 9th Mechanized Cavalry Regiments as well as the 8th Reconnaissance Regiment. The 3rd Light Division was sent to participate in the 1939 invasion of Poland, after which it was converted to the 8th Panzer Division in the winter of 1939. As part of the reorganization, its reconnaissance regiment of 2 battalions was split, one going to the 10th Panzer Division and the other staying with the 8th Panzer Division. The 2 battalions comprising the 10th Panzer Regiment from East Prussian were added, as was the 8th Rifle Brigade, which now controlled the 8th Rifle Regiment of 3 battalions and the 8th Motorcycle Battalion. The Panzer battalions were equipped primarily with Czech tanks and Mk2 light tanks, leaving the 8th Panzer Division with a total of 212 tanks in its organization for the attack into France. The division also contained an anti-tank battalion of initially only 2 companies, equipped with the ubiquitous, but seriously underpowered 37mm PaK 35-36, a pioneer battalion, signals and support units. The divisional artillery was supplied by 2 battalions of 105mm howitzers. By February 1941, the division was organized as follows: 8th Rifle Brigade, 8th Rifle Regiment, 28th Rifle Regiment, 8th Motorcycle Battalions, 10th Panzer Regiment, 80th Artillery Regiment, 43rd Panzer Jaeger Battalion, 59th Reconnaissance Battalion, 59th Pioneer Battalion, 84th Signals Battalion, 59th Division Support Units. The 67th Panzer Battalion had been incorporated into the 10th Panzer Regiment as 3rd Battalion. The infantry was now organized under 2 regiments of 2 battalions of motorized infantry each. The Artillery Regiment had gained another battalion of heavy guns from the 645th Heavy Artillery Battalion. History. It was made a part of 41st Motorized Corps for the Battle of France. In the battles of the Meuse crossings, French forces were initially able to repel German attacks. Eventually, however, the French were forced to retreat in the face of an overwhelming assault by German panzers. The division was involved in the destruction of the 1st and the 7th Armies in May 1940, and remained on the line in France until the country's conquest in June 1940. At the start of Operation Barbarossa, the 8th Panzer Division was assigned to Erich von Manstein's 56th Panzer Corps, part of Panzer Group 4, which was tasked with the main drive through the Baltic states in the direction of Leningrad, Soviet Union's second largest city. Attacking in the pre-dawn hours of the 22nd of June 1941, the division soon found a gap in the Russian border defenses and by nightfall had penetrated to a distance of 70 kilometers, driven by the division commander to maintain a rapid pace, and switching focus between its battle groups to find the path of least resistance. The division reached the Dvina River on the morning of the fourth day. Its combat engineers, with the assistance of a company of Brandenburgers, mounted a rout and managed to capture both the rail and road bridge intact. Soon the 8th Panzer Division had tanks and infantry across the river, but was forced to halt and wait for resupply and the other Panzer Corps of Panzer Group 4 to catch up. The following days were spent gradually expanding its bridgehead whilst fending off Russian counterattacks from the Soviet 21 Mechanized Corps, resumed a rapid advance to the east against Russian forces now in complete disarray. On the 7th of October it began to snow in the Army Group North area, and by the 15th of October the snow was ankle-deep. General Lieb completed his regrouping for the continued attack across the Volkhov River towards Tikhvin. The infantry formed bridgeheads from which 8th Panzer and the other mobile units of 39 attacked on the 19th of October. However, progress was agonizingly slow, the muddy roads almost impassable to any but tracked vehicles, and the army was having difficulties bringing in supplies behind the troops. The corps finally reached and captured Tikhvin on the 11th of November, leaving a 100 km flank weakly covered by the 8th Panzer. The freezing weather meant that the roads improved slightly, which helped the transport of supplies but not the troops who, still lacking winter clothing, suffered greatly from the conditions. Eventually nearly the entire division was united in the Qum relief attempt, and after its successful relief defended a very loose but wide sector just to the south of Qum, in the bogs and marshes stretching down towards the Army Group boundary. Here the division remained for most of 1942 until it was transferred to Army Group Center in the winter of 1942. After the winter fighting of 1941, the incursions by the 3rd and 4th Soviet shock armies between Army Groups North and Center had stretched the front to such an extent that the Germans could not occupy a single line, but resorted to isolated strong points instead. This defense stance, although necessary, left them vulnerable to penetration, and in XX 1942 the Soviet exploited the weakness and encircled substantial forces in the city of Velikiye Luki. Hitler forbade a breakout attempt by the troops and declared the city a fortress. General Chevalerie, who had defended the area since the winter battles, determined to accomplish what the Wehrmacht had pulled off twice the previous winter at Demyansk and Qum, which was to have the encircled troops supplied by air and mount a successful relief operation. The 8th Panzer Division would become a main component of the relief attempt, and was in place by the 1st of December. After an initial surge, the division attack bogged down against fierce Soviet resistance. The relief forces continued to inch forward, but progress was slow and costly, and by the 13th of December 1942 the 8th Panzer Division has suffered 1473 casualties, including 82 officers. 2 days later the division's drive was virtually stopped. The main weight of the relief was now with Group W to the south, but its attacking units had similarly suffered highly and unit strengths were plummeting. The attack was kept going for the sake of the encircled troops, but it was obvious to General Kurt von Chevalerie that without additional forces it would not succeed. At the start of January, Army Group Center assigned 2 additional divisions plus another panzer battalion for a renewed push towards the city. The 8th Panzer participated in the renewed offensive, but although the relief forces got to within 4 kilometers kilometers of the encirclement. They were only able to assist small groups to break out. Thousands of wounded and stragglers were taken prisoner as the Soviet forces finally squeezed the garrison out of existence. The 8th Panzer Division took up defensive positions north of the Ukrainian capital, but failed to prevent the Soviet army's breakthrough, and was pushed back until Manstein, now commander of Army Group South, orchestrated a counterstroke at Zhytomyr, temporarily stabilizing the front. However, the reprieve did not last, and renewed Soviet thrusts forced the 4th Panzer Army and the 8th Panzer Division with it, back towards the Polish frontier. On 12 July 1944, the Soviet First Ukrainian Front launched a massive offensive in the direction of Lvov. The front had over 800,000 men, 13,000 guns and mortars and 200 tanks, attacking with two main groupings. Both rapidly broke through the German defenses, and by the sixth day of the operation had trapped several units in a pocket under 13th Army Corps command, including elements of 8th Panzer Division. The 8th Panzer Division had been in reserve rebuilding near Brody, and was immediately committed to the breakthrough area but failed to stop the Soviet advance. On 20, the division mounted a failed relief attempt but was compelled to retreat. The trapped forces managed to break the ring around them but had to filter the way through the attacking Red Army formation, and only a part of the numbers and without any vehicles or heavy weapons. The division continued to resist the Soviet advances, fighting in Hungary in the winter battles around Budapest, and then transferred to Silesia, where it battled on until finally surrendering to Soviet forces near Prague. Commanding officers. The commanders of the division: General der Panzertruppe Adolf Friedrich Kuntzen, the 16th of October 1939 to 20 February 1941. General der Panzertruppe Erich Brandenberger, 2021 February 1941. General Lieutenant Walter Neumann Silkoff, the 21st of February 1941 to 26 May 1941. General der Panzertruppe Erich Brandenberger, the 26th of May, the 8th of December 1941. General Lieutenant Werner Hunat, the 8th of December 1941 to 28 January 1942. General der Panzertruppe Erich Brandenberger, the 29th of January 1942 to 6 August 1942. General Lieutenant Joseph Schrotter, the 6th of August 1942 to 10 November 1942. General der Panzertruppe Erich Brandenberger, the 10th of November 1942 to 17 January 1943. General Lieutenant Sebastian Fichtner, the 17th of January 1943 to 20 September 1943. General Major Gottfried Froelich, the 20th of September 1943 to 1 April 1944. General Major Werner Frieber, the 1st of April 1944 to 21 July 1944. General Major Gottfried Froelich, the 21st of July 1944 to 5 January 1945.